Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Kitchen Colony, and today in my kitchen I'll be cooking brown stewed turkey. This turkey is wonderful, very delicious. Though it looks like chicken, it doesn't have the same texture. But watch me as I prepare it. You'll love it. It's delicious. My family do love it, and I hope you will too. Now let's take a look at some of the things that we need to prepare this. Now I went to the butcher's and I bought my turkey leg, and the butcher sliced it nicely for me, and that's how it looks. And I'll be cleaning that up, and along with a range of other seasonings and stuff that we'll be using to prepare this meal. Now in this bowl you'll see me use a range of fresh herbs that I'll be using, and I'll list the names as I go along. Now I'll be adding some root vegetables, not a lot, and a little dough. We call it spinners back home. Along with our fresh seasonings, we'll be using, the dry ones too, along with some soy sauce for color. Now in my first bowl I have a half a spoon of all-purpose, a half a spoon of Szechuan, and a half a spoon of garlic powder. Then in the next bowl I have half a teaspoon of ginger powder and a teaspoon of black pepper. Then it's a dense meat, it's not very fatty, so you need some oil. And then I'll be using jerk seasoning. In this case it's just for flavor. Now I'm going to wash my meat with the usual vinegar and salt, and then take off anything, the skin and other tissues that I don't want in my meat. Now run your meat under some very cool water, and then you start removing the skin. Now I've washed and cleaned the meat. I am about to start slicing in chunks. Sometimes I use the scissors and sometimes I use the knife. And I'll clear away those fatty parts, in between the meats also. Now I'm just cutting away some of the meat from the main bone. You have to leave some meat for the bone, So I cut away most of it, but leave enough for the bone. Now I'll show you how I slice it using the knife. It is similar because everybody should know how to do that. But I'm making sure I'm leaving, enough meat around the bone, because the bone does give flavor. Trust me, it really does give a food flavor. So we try to retain that. Now feel free to cut yours smaller or bigger, but I like this size because it does shrink. Now I am preparing the other vegetables for the pot because the turkey will cook quicker than beef. So you need to have everything prepared so that you don't overcook the meat. Now I'm slicing my vegetables in bite-sized pieces. If you're cooking a hot pot, you can make your vegetables chunky, but I want bite-sized pieces for mine. to chop your onions much smaller, but I just didn't do that. But it will cook away. Now I'll be using 1 teaspoon of jerk seasoning, and I'll be mixing it in the soy sauce. Now this is actually 2 tablespoons of dark soy sauce. Now it's time to season the meat. I'll be grating my 2 garlic cloves over the meat. Now I'm going to pour my soy mixture over the meat and rub it in thoroughly. Now I'm going to mix all my dry ingredients together for one consistent blend. And now that's a teaspoon of herb, and I have a tablespoon of dark sugar, and we're going to just mix them together to get one consistent blend. Now we sprinkle half of the mixture and rub. Sprinkle and rub, then we sprinkle the other half and rub, so that every piece of meat will get some of this dry seasoning. Now I'm going to add all the other chopped herbs like the coriander and parsley, and I've left the pimento berries whole. I didn't crush them this time. Now, as I've always said, when you put these fresh ingredients in, we squeeze while we rub it in the meat. You squeeze the fresh vegetable like the onion, squeeze to get some of those juices out and rub it in the meat. And that's what I'm doing here. Now after you've done this, put it away for at least 1 hour, or you can leave it overnight, but put it away in the refrigerator for at least an hour before cooking. Now it's time to cook the meat, and turkey is a very lean meat, doesn't have a lot of fat, so we'll have to use a generous amount of oil. And in my pot I'll be putting about 3 tablespoons of oil to cook this meal. Now I'll be removing all the fresh herbs from the meat to prepare it to cook. You don't want to cook the herbs immediately with the meat because you'll have burning and all of that. We just want to remove it, fry up the meat, and then we'll add it later on. But you may not be able to remove all, but please remove most. Now that we've done that, make sure our oil is very hot before we add the meat to the pot. We want it to start frying. Yes, we want that sizzling. We want to sear the meat, as my mother would say, to lock in the flavor. So you make sure your oil is very hot. And then we're going to give it a quick stir. Now we give it a quick stir to make sure that we don't have any sticking going on, because that's one piece that sticks would burn and change the flavor for meat. Now guys, I should have stated that this is only 1 turkey leg, and it shrinks. So if you have a large family, you might need about 2 or more. Now I've adjusted my stove to medium and cover the pot and allow it to steam for about 15 minutes. And what you're seeing there is the juice from the meat. I've not added any water, and I'm allowing the meat to cook in its own juice, and I'm allowing the water to evaporate. So we're going to cover it after the first 15 minutes to allow it to dry out even more. Now after the second 15 minutes, this is when you'll be adding water. So at this point, turn your kettle on. Now check our pot after 15 minutes, and we're going to stir. Now you've noticed that the meat is sticking at the bottom. It is sticking. Now we know we need water at this point. So we're going to add about a cup of water, about a cup, to allow it to cook for another 15 minutes. Now stir to ensure that there is no meat sticking at the bottom, because that piece of meat that is sticking at the bottom will burn and change the flavor of your pot. Now my third 15 minutes is up, and you check the pot and the water has dried down. Now it's the perfect time to put the carrots in and the fresh vegetables. Now at this point I'm going to adjust my stove between medium and low, and I'm going to let it steam for about 5 minutes. Then I'm going to put my spinners, as we'd call it back home, in. Now making your spinners is just pinching a piece of dough, put it in the middle of the palm and just rub, and then you get that little long curly looking dough, and you just drop it in the pot. Simple. You can make them bigger, you can make them smaller, but whatever you like. I've not added any more water. What you see there is a liquid from the vegetables, the juice from the vegetable, creating that liquid. Now what I've done to my potatoes, I've lightly fried them in the air fryer because I like to see them whole. So you don't have to do that. And I've done that. And at this point I'm adding about a half a cup of water, a little over half a cup, and then I'm going to cover. Now the potatoes are not going to break apart, and that's what I'm looking for. I've adjusted my stove to low, and after 15 minutes I've checked it, and there's a gravy, and I want it to cook down a little bit more, but you can stop there if you want, but I want mine to a bit more thick. I'm not in the habit of using cornstarch and flour to thicken mine, but if you want to, you can do that. So I'm just waiting for it to cook down a little more, and then your meat will be done. Trust me, it's very delicious. Now here we have it, the finished product, brown stewed turkey leg. Delicious. Similar to beef, a very tender piece of beef. I'd like you to try it and tell me what you think. Now if you've enjoyed what you've just seen, please feel free to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, click on the notification bell, and please feel free to leave a comment also. It will be greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.